Hi, how you doing? It's Gareth. Thanks for coming and watching this video. And in this, I just wanted to explain about the rise and fall of my first online business, which I had between 2006 and 2010. And I started that business. I won't go into the reasons why I was in that situation, but I was sort of out on my backside, really. Beginning of 2006, I just bought a house and I needed to get something going. I'm not the kind of guy who goes and gets a job. That's been self-employed since I was 20, so I didn't have a lot of choice, really. So I had a product. I had like a little product. I didn't necessarily need it, but even in those days, you could do affiliate stuff. But I had my own little software product that I'd written years before that was kind of 90% finished. So I just quickly got that finished and made to look nice. And I got a couple of breaks at the beginning because a friend of mine had just started a web design agency and he needed testimonials. So he said, I'll do your website for free as long as you act as a testimonial, so I can give people your number, ring them up, and then say nice things about me. I said, yeah, fine, win-win. A graphics guy that I knew designed me a logo for free again. He owed me a favour and a few other things. So the website looked quite nice, and I launched it and it was tumbleweeds. I just didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't even know it was an online business. It was just the internet was the only way that I knew how to sell it at all. So I was kind of in a bit of a state. I didn't have a lot of money coming in, and about sort of June 2006, somebody came along and said to me, have you tried Google AdWords? And I hadn't heard of it. And going back to 2006, sort of Google was the biggest search engine, but it was by no means like the huge megalith that it is now. There was still quite a lot of other search engines. But AdWords was a way to advertise on Google on their search listings. And this person, I can't remember exactly who it was. It could be one of three people. And he explained to me that rather than wait for Google to bubble up the website all the way to the top, which could take forever, if at all, is to actually put your advert, your listing for your website, actually on the front page or near the top of the first page, and you pay for the privilege, but you only pay when someone clicks on it. And that to me blew my mind, because back in the 90s when I had a business, used to advertise in magazines and things like this, and even a small quarter page advert would cost you quite a few £100, and there was no guarantee you'd get an inquiry, no guarantee you'd get a phone call, much less a sale. If you wanted a full page ad, it'd be maybe a couple of grand or something like that, and you were taking a risk. With this one, they were going to put the advert up on the listings for free in front of people who were searching for this type of software that I had. And I only paid when someone clicked on it and went to my website. This was a revelation to me at the time. It's no big deal these days. It's been around a long time, but it's a revelation. So I said, yeah, great, I'll do this. I had no clue what I was doing, just completely winged it. Even the person who advised me about it didn't know anything about it. He just heard about it. So anyway, so I just watched a couple. Didn't even watch tutorials in those days. This was before YouTube even, showing my age. And I just read a couple of tutorials and one or two bits of advice that I heard here, there, and about. And I launched my first campaign on Google AdWords. And sure enough, for 5-10 pence a click, that I set it to in a very low daily budget that I could afford at the time. I had very little money coming in. In fact, a little secret I didn't reveal for many years afterwards is that I'd bought my house about 6 months before and I borrowed money on top. You could do that in those days. Borrowed money on top to do some renovations. And I had to put those reservations on hold and use some of that money just to launch this advertising campaign. That's how bad things were at the time. So I launched this campaign purely on a wing and a prayer. And this was the early days of Google. They were fairly new to this themselves. They weren't making a ton of money out of it. And so they were just letting people do whatever they wanted to do. Okay. And it wasn't really the big boys. It wasn't the big companies. It was generally smaller players who were on there. It really didn't take a genius to set any of this up. And trust me, I was no genius. I knew nothing about it. So I set this thing up, and first month, I did get lots of leads, which was for my software, was like free download. So I give them a free trial of the software for 30 days. And lots of people suddenly coming to the website, and even quite a few sales, and which I was quite pleased about. But still, at the end of the month, I think it was July 2006, I'd lost about £270. But I kind of thought, well, at least I'm getting traffic, at least I'm getting sign-ups. Surely at some point some of these sign-ups who haven't bought are going to buy, and it takes 30 days, they get a 30-day trial, so it's going to take longer. So I just thought, what choice have I got? I've just got to keep doing it. Second month, I sort of just about broke even, I think. And then after that, it started to scale. And by the end of 2006, I was actually earning a kind of a fairly decent sort of basic sort of income from it, which was good enough for me at the time. I just thought, well, as long as I'm actually making some money at this, that's the main thing. So just let me take a quick drink of my coffee here. And that's my dog just rolling around there. So, to cut a long story short, it started to take off. And Google wasn't the only game in town at the time, as I discovered. There was other search engines that I could advertise on. There was other advertising networks. And so I started to scale all of this out, and I started to spend more money, and I started to make more money. But eventually I discovered that Google was the one that was making me the most money. That was the one that was making me the biggest return. And I was getting a 2.5 to 1 return on that, which means that I would put £1 in to the marketing or the advertising, and I would get £3.5 back out, which is brilliant. It was almost like a machine that was just printing money. It wasn't like I didn't have to work for that. I had a product and I had to support customers, and back then I had a telephone number on the site and I had to be there by the phone. It wasn't completely passive. But I had this great business that was just growing and growing and growing. I was scaling it out, and I thought I was a guru. I thought I'd made it. I thought I'm going to write a book on how to be a Google AdWords millionaire. I thought I was the Google AdWords messiah. I honestly thought I was the dog's doo-doos, to be quite honest with you. How wrong! I want to give myself a slap, to be honest with you, looking back. But I remember sort of July 2007, I had my best month ever. I'd earned more in that month than I'd ever earned with any other business that I'd had in 6 months. And it was a month before I got married, and I just thought, I've done it. I'm the great provider for me and my wife as we're getting married and going on this journey. And in the August, we flew off to Australia and Thailand for the month's honeymoon. And every day I was just checking my emails at an internet cafe, and there it was. The leads were coming in, the downloads were coming in, the sales were coming in, the money was coming in, and I was sat on the beach most of the day. I was this was it. This was the dream. I was living the dream, and it was just an amazing experience. And then we came back from honeymoon, and I was expecting things to keep going up and up and up, and all of a sudden I started to find that the months were very much up and down. I'd have a great month, and then I'd have a down month. And then the good months started to get less and less, and the down months were sort of getting more frequent, to the point where I was earning sort of about half of what I was earning in my best months in 2007. So as we got into 2008, and at the time the recession, there was rumblings that this thing was going to happen. But it hadn't actually kicked in. Sorry, the dog's having a drink. And so there was rumblings, but I didn't really know what was happening. But what happened, it wasn't really the recession that caused the fall of that business. It was more to do with the fact that all the big boys, once the recession started to hit, they jumped onto this newfangled platform called Google AdWords. Previously, we had the smaller guys, we virtually had it all to ourselves. Now the big boys were jumping on. Now it was getting more competitive, and it just became, and Google also were releasing updates, and it was getting more complex, the actual platform to use it. And being the idiot that I was at the time, thinking that I knew it all, I didn't need to do training courses. I didn't know to go and find myself a mentor. I didn't know I'm going buying different courses or getting a training platform or anything like that. I knew it all, didn't I? I didn't know how to do that. I wasn't going to spend money on stuff like that. I was earning great money on my own. Thank you very much. Again, I just want to slap myself in the face looking back. And so when it all changed, and it virtually changed overnight within a few months, got in sort of 2008. Towards the end of throughout 2008, it happened pretty rapidly, and I just didn't know how to react. I didn't have a clue what to do, and I've been winging it, and I got away with it, which you could do in those days. But once I really had to know my stuff, once you really had to, really get into it and know your stuff and mastered the art, that was when everything started to fall apart. And without getting too technical, what essentially happened was everybody was coming in with higher bids to get their ads shown up. And I had to maintain a certain margin. And again, it wasn't just the fact that it was tactical advertising that was my problem. It was also my business model. It began to unravel because what I was doing, I was selling a one-off product fairly cheap. And so people would buy from me once and I'd never hear from them again, which is a really bad business model, by the way. You want to have customers who are going to pay you ongoing, whether that's a recurring subscription service or you've got higher end products that you can sell to them, because, selling to an existing customer is multitudes easier than getting a new customer. And all these other businesses, they understood this and I didn't. And by the time I sussed it out, what was happening was, because I've been selling it cheaper and one-off, I've been attracting the low-hanging fruit customers. So those people weren't prepared to pay bigger money. They weren't prepared to pay higher prices. They weren't prepared to get on a subscription model. So the whole thing just unraveled fairly quickly. The advertising became too expensive for me to do because I had to maintain a certain margin. And so it declined very quickly, but it took another sort of year or two before it sort of died a rather sort of slow, painful death. So by 2010, I stopped the advertising because I just couldn't afford it, and it was over by 2000 and the end of 2010. And it was also the lessons that I took from that, which because I can explain this to you now exactly what happened and sort of rationalize what happened. But actually, when I was in it, I didn't know. I was just, it's the recession, and that was it. And because Google AdWords got sort of more complex and more competitive, I kind of convinced myself it's not for the little guy anymore. It's just for the big guys. Our time has been, we've lost it. It's finished. A lot of people online were saying the same thing, so that just sort of helped to solidify that belief. And it was nonsense, really, but that's what I believed. And I took the lesson that online marketing wasn't for me, that strictly online business was not for the little guy anymore. It was all for the big players. And so I started a different business that was very much traditional based, and I stayed away from online marketing. I stayed away from anything to do with sort of even though I had a website and things, I stayed away from marketing online and things like that. And I was pretty shut down about it, to be honest with you. And I made loads of mistakes, all based on that premise that online business wasn't for me anymore. And it wasn't until sort of 2017, 2018 when I started to look at things and I discovered SFM that I realised that was all nonsense. That actually it's more than ever for the little guy. It's more than ever for anyone. But, and here's the big caveat and the big lesson that I would take from it, and one I hope that you'll learn as well, and that you won't make this mistake, is learn to do it, okay? Get a training platform. Keep up to date. Get mentors. If only I would have done it back then, the money I could have made. Get the right business strategies in place. Get the right business model so that you can get the right returns on your marketing budget. It was... When I joined SFM, and just a few tidbits that I got, in fact, one of the tidbits was just from that free video series before I even spent any money with them. Give me a big insight that had I have known that back then, I could have turned that business around and made a lot of money and kept running it and done really well out of it. So, and that said to me from that knowledge before, wow, it was one of those aha moments. It was like, oh, if only I would have known that then, and that made me realise, actually, yeah, this is a real deal. These guys know what they're talking about. I'm in. So that's about it, really. That's the story. It's like continuity error there. My phone ran out of memory. So I've put a couple of links to a couple of blog posts about the rise and fall of that first online business. If you fancy a bit of a read, go into a bit more detail about it. I've also put a couple of buttons there just to see if you want to find out a little bit more about joining SFM, which is a digital online training platform. So if you want to start an online business, like I've just said, learn to do it, master it, okay? Don't do what I do. Don't wing it and waste a lot of time and money and effort without actually knowing your stuff. And everything changes fairly quickly in the online world, so you need that platform to keep you up to date with the latest trends. So yeah, there's a couple of buttons. One is to submit your application, which will sort of give you initial introduction into SFM, and the other one is just to find out a little bit more, which will take you to a video of Stuart Ross, who's one of the founders of SFM, who you would have seen from the original video workshop series, and he'll just explain a bit more about what SFM is. So that's enough from me. Won't take up any more of your time. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you've got a bit from it anyway. Probably the best way to learn in life is learn from other people's mistakes. Don't make your own. Definitely. People say learn from your mistakes. It's far better to learn from other people's. So hopefully you've learned from mine. So I'll see you soon anyway. And yeah, take care. Have a great day. Cheers. Bye now.